From Tridio Media, I'm Father Roderick, and this is the Daily Breakfast. As you know, I am on a journey towards a minimalist future. And that's nothing scary. It's just this ideal that I have of being happier with less. And so far, this journey has been amazing. It is probably one of the most life-changing journeys that I've been on. And of course, as you can imagine, very compatible with the gospel. Take a look at a saint like Saint Francis of Assisi, who literally stood there on the marketplace in front of his father, naked. He threw away all his clothes and he was embraced by the bishop, who used his mantle to cover Francis. And from that moment on, he was a child of the church and he started to live a life of a poor beggar, basically. But that poverty inspired millions of people. And it definitely inspired me of trying to find ways to get rid of the clutter in my life and also to be much more intentional about how I spend my money. What do I do with the goods that have been entrusted to me? Kind of realizing that what I have is not mine. It is a gift. I was lucky to be born in a very wealthy country. The Netherlands is one of the wealthiest, most prosperous countries in the world. And many of you that are listening to this are also part of that demographic. The fact that you're listening to this, digital technology, like many people in this world don't have access to that. But it comes with a responsibility. And I think my ultimate quest is not minimalism. It's not getting rid of stuff, but it is to make sure that I help other people as much as I can with what I've received as a gift myself. It's kind of passing on what you have received. That is kind of the logic of Christian life in general. It's what God does. God does not keep anything for himself. He gives everything he has in Jesus. And so God is a giver, and he wants us to be givers as well, because he knows that is the only way to become truly happy, is by becoming a giver. Well, one of the things that I struggle with is that philosophy has not been part of my day-to-day life in the past. And so I have amassed a tremendous amount of junk, of stuff that I thought I needed to be happy, that I thought I needed to be, up to date, etc., etc. And a lot of that stuff is now gathering dust in my rooms, and I want to get rid of it. And I've noticed time and again how difficult it is, much more difficult than it seems, because there's always this rationalizing process in my brain that made me also want to buy that stuff in the first place. For example, I just shared with you that the other week I gave away my PlayStation 4. And the logic of me buying that PlayStation 4 was, well, I need to go with the times. I need to know what the kids like so I can talk to the younger generation. And I was like, well, you don't necessarily need to buy expensive equipment for that. You can just kind of listen to a younger generation and stay up to date. It doesn't have to, don't need to possess stuff. Before I bought the PlayStation 4, I bought a PlayStation 3 and I bought an Xbox 360. And it's funny that for me, having owned an Xbox 360 for many years was even more difficult to let go of that thing. And so I bought it back then, and I collected so many games. And when even though I bought most of those games when they were on sale, that was also a way for me to rationalize expenses. I was like, but it's on sale. It's 25% off. I need to buy this now. No, you don't. That's me telling myself from 6 years ago, no, you don't need to buy that. But I did. And so just looking, I'm ashamed when I look at my collection of games and how much money I poured into that. I really feel like that was unnecessary. It didn't help me in my mission at all. It made me feel super guilty because I never had time to play those games. So and I spent my money on stuff that didn't make other people happy. And I could have helped so many people with the money that I spend on those games. So that makes you like this. Perhaps it's because I'm getting older, but I'm getting more and more let's say, deliberate in how I spend my money, and I want to spend it on people and experiences that help other people instead of just on entertainment. Now, of course, I'm not a purist, and if you know that I enjoy certain things and I love technology, etc. It's just that before I buy it, the question is always, do I need it or do I want it? And so this 360, this Xbox was still, I couldn't let go of it. I was telling myself that, well, it's a 360 with a Kinect, and I bought a few discs with fitness apps, and it gives you your digital personal trainer, and I can use it to get fit again and lose weight and be strong, etc. And I was like, okay, but how? You need a television for that. The only television that I have, I'm using that as a monitor for my PC. So I would have to buy another television. And then what? You're going to put that Kinect in your room, the room where you do your fitness exercises. There's already this big treadmill in the center of the room. There is no place for a Kinect. There's no room for that. And you've tried these programs in the past as well to get fit. And you usually do like 2 or 3 lessons and you're like, oh, I got to do 10 pull-ups. That's too hard. Forget it. I'll do that some other time. Happened year after year after year. So basically, that idea of like, I need to hold on to this Xbox 360 and to the Kinect and to these programs that are no longer for sale anywhere because Microsoft does not support the Kinect anymore. It was just, I was using that to rationalize me holding on to that thing. And just this past week, I was like, I got rid of the PlayStation 4. I can't get rid of the Xbox 360. And then I look at all these games and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've spent so much money on that. The truth is, that's already money that you threw away in the past. It's better to sell it now and then whatever that still brings in, give that away and try to make amends and be more intentional about your future expenses. But there is no use in holding on to stuff that you once spent money on as an excuse for, well, I need to keep this because I invested in this. No, that was stupid money from years ago. Don't make that mistake in the future. That's the future is the only thing that's truly going to change your life and the life of others. And so I packed it all in 3 or 4 boxes. I'm going to bring that to my local secondhand store and see what they can still give me back. And I'm afraid it's not going to be much. Another thing was I had this steering wheel, Logitech Momo steering wheel. I bought it on sale. I'm Dutch, so I think I paid about $100 for it back then. This is 8 years ago, I think, and it still works. This thing still works. And it was just gathering dust in the only closet that I have. And the other day I was like, okay, I have a free weekend. I'd worked so hard last week that I gave myself some time off on Sunday afternoon. I was like, I'm going to do some racing. I'm just going to race around and I'm going to put that steering wheel on my desk. And then it took me like an hour to fix it to my desk. And then it had a USB cable and it had like an analog cable. And it was such a hassle. And once it was in place, it was just sitting there in front of my screen. And I couldn't use the keyboard anymore because the steering wheel was in the keyboard. Like, okay, well, that's the price you have to pay for some cool entertainment. I'm now going to pretend I'm driving this truck through Europe. And then I'm going to play American truck driver. And I'm going to drive around on the Golden Gate Bridge. And I have a real steering wheel. And it will be awesome. Well, the first time I launched Euro Trucker 2. And I was trying to drive to Brussels from Amsterdam. So that's very, very short trip. The only thing that happened was that every time my truck was either going through the red light and I would get a fine, or I would crash in other cars. And it didn't feel at all like me really steering something. It was just completely impractical. And so the memory that I had of these games that I once played with that steering wheel, that nostalgia did not correspond to the real experience. Because now that I retried to play these games with that steering wheel, I was like, well, this is not what I remembered it to be. And so it's sometimes we hold on to stuff because the nostalgia factor makes us believe that it's still worth holding on to. But then when you put it to the test, it's like, oh man, this is just nonsense. And so I was so frustrated after an hour of playing with the steering wheel that I unscrewed it and I put it in a box. It's like, this is going away. The same is true for movies. I have a big movie collection, and I hold on to a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays, thinking, oh, but this is such a cool movie, and this one has director's commentary, and then I realize that I'm not taking the time to rewatch these movies, and I think that perhaps 60% of the movies that I once bought, I will never watch them again. Why? Because there's so many other movies that I still want to watch. And I can now watch movies on Netflix and on Amazon Prime, and I have a subscription to my local movie theater. You know what? There are only a few movies that I will rewatch, like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and Back to the Future and Star. I know exactly which movies. The movies that I can name without having to think. And all the other stuff, I bought it because, well, maybe one day. Maybe one day is always a recipe for clutter. And so, again, it's making me much more conscientious of what do I invest in? And is this truly an investment that is useful, that I'm truly going to appreciate a few years from now? Or am I just pouring money in a hole because I tell myself that I need it and I've rationalized this? Another thing is like equipment, gear that I hold on to. You know, it's bad enough that these phones nowadays only last for 3 update cycles. Just the other day, Android or Google said that they will no longer provide an upgrade for their Nexus 5 and Nexus 6 phones. These are just 2 years old, and they're already obsolete. And then, of course, if they don't support them they don't give any updates, then your devices become vulnerable, especially on the Android platform. So already these devices have such a short lifespan. I'd rather, and not to mention that, of course, they have a big carbon footprint, and they use a lot of rare materials. I should be much more deliberate in what do I truly need. Do I really need a new phone every year? Do I need the latest updates or not? So that's a question you have to ask yourself all the time. And Lent may be a good time to ask yourself these questions. And my experience is that the more I get rid of stuff, the more I let go, the more it helps me to be a little bit more deliberate with my expenses in the future. And also, the more I let go, the easier it becomes to let go. And so the Xbox 360 took me literally more than 6 months to let go. Now I'm at the point, same thing with that little steering wheel. I was like, I can't throw that away. It's cool to race with a real steering wheel. Now I'm telling myself, like, dude, you have a car. If you want to really feel like you're on the road, and just go and sit in your car and do that in the parking lot, you know? Oh, well, the things you learn when you get older. Hey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this theme. If you have any tips, is there something that you have trouble letting go? If you need some advice, then just ask me. I've been there, and I've not done that. Sometimes I did. Hey, but this is a conversation that will probably pop up in the future as well. I'll let you know. My goal at the end of Lent, I want to be rid of everything that is clutter in my life. And I only want to keep what truly gives me joy, what truly is useful. And the rest, I just don't need it anymore. And so I'm getting rid of it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more of my shows, then go over to Tridio.com, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and thanks to my patrons. If you want to join them and support my work, go over to patreon.com/Father Roderick. And oh, by the way, check out That Star Wars Priest. It's my new Star Wars podcast. Subscribe. That's it for today. I will see you next week. Take care, and God bless.